So for this video, I want to talk about a really important technique used in Timba Basslines. You'll probably notice in a lot of the examples, both in the 2-3 examples and the 3-2 examples, that I'm playing a lot of percussive dead notes in my right hand. For those of you who don't know what dead notes are, that's where the string is muted with the right hand, and the plucking hand is playing the string accordingly, and that creates this muted kind of pitchless or dead note, or a note in absence of a pitch. So what this does is that it fills in the gaps in these bass lines. You'll notice a lot of these bass lines are very spacious in certain parts. So this kind of does two things. It enables you to kind of fill in the gaps of the bass line and kind of keep time for yourself, and also blend with the percussion a little bit better. And it also kind of creates an effect all its own that enhances the groove in its own way as well. And you'll notice that that you can play these bass lines without the percussive effects, but there will always be an element missing if you don't. It'll really sound a lot more authentic if you add these effects into your playing. Obviously, when you're starting out and you're just getting the notes of each bass line under your fingers, I would highly advise that at first you try to leave the percussive effects out, but as you become more comfortable with them, they really can add a whole different, third dimension to your playing that probably wasn't there before. So before we look at these techniques in the context of an actual bass line, let's just briefly go over different ways to actually produce these sounds and what some of these sounds are. So I described that a little bit in the in my first description, but in case there's any confusion, I'll go over them individually. So the most simple percussive effect to use in your right hand is, of course, the standard, what I would consider to be the standard dead note. For those of you who are relatively fluent in playing funk, and are familiar with bass players like Francis Rocco Priesti of Tower of Power, or Jocko, or a lot of funk players that mostly play lines with their fingers, many of you will be very familiar with how to produce these sounds. But for those of you that don't, it literally you can literally play normally with your right hand, and with your left hand simply put your fingers across the string to mute it. Now be careful that you don't actually play the open string, or that you don't sustain the actual fretted note that you just played. Now you can actually use these in traditional Clave Neutral Tumbaos as well. And I'm actually going to demonstrate that really quick over the original chord progression, the same A minor, D7, F major, E7 chord progression. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So another percussive effect that's used by a lot of timba bass players is, there's no real name for it. Some people call it right hand taps, and it's literally just between notes or during like long rests and stuff like that. It's literally just like playing usually quarter notes with your right hand. You're just tapping down on the string, so the string actually bounces off the frets, creating this kind of, another muted percussive sound that's different than the standard dead notes that I was describing before.